Hey everybody, Fradham here, and tonight I'm going to do a fresh install of Arch Linux. This is proper Arch Linux, not Antergos, not Apricity, not any offshoot of Arch. This is going to be a full-blown Arch install from the beginning all the way to the point of having a working GUI. About the second time I've ever done it. And it is, I don't consider it very complicated, but I do find that it is time consuming and there's a lot of steps. So I don't know how long this video is going to be. So we'll try to make it go as quickly as possible. And I'll cut out, anything that takes an extra amount of time, like when it downloads files and all that neat stuff. I've downloaded the latest ISO image, which is dated October 1st of this year, 2016, and I've booted it in my virtual machine. I'll be doing this in a VM. And here's the screen. This is the grub screen. Now, this is going to seem totally different if you're used to installing things like Ubuntu or Antergos or Fedora or any of those. This is going to be a little bit of a culture shock because it boots right into a root shell. So we'll go ahead and load that up. And here we go. Arch ISO. So the first thing we need to do is we need to partition our drive. And that is done with a program called fdisk. And if you're familiar with the old DOS days, fdisk is quite similar to fdisk from DOS. So fdisk and our device, you can find out what your device is by doing dmesg. That's I forget what that stands for, but that's the system messages. And then grep, so you do a pipe grep sd, and you'll see that our hard drive is called sda. So we'll do fdisk/dev for device and then sda. And if we look at the partition table, you'll see it's empty. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make a boot partition. And I like to make the boot partition big enough to hold more than one kernel along with the grub configs. So I tend to make it about a gig in size. So we'll do the first one as the primary. The partition number is 1. Go for the default on the starting sector. And then on the last we can say plus 1 with a capital G. That tells it 1 gig. So if we hit P, we'll see that we now have a Linux type partition of about approximately 1 gig, setting as device SDA1. We'll need to remember that later on in the game, that SDA1 is our boot partition. Will be /boot. Then I will make the swap partition. I like to make it early on so that I know how much space I'm going to use and I don't have to try to remember later on to save enough space for swap. So the second thing I do is make a swap partition. So we hit new on the primary and it'll be the second partition. We go for the default for the first sector because that'll tack on to the end of the partition we made already. And then we do, this system has 8 gigs of RAM. So we do plus 8G. Typically, the rule of thumb is a 1-to-1 match for swap. As you get into bigger systems with a lot more RAM, it's not important to do 1-to-1. But I'm just going to do it here for the sake of following the old rules. So we're going to do an 8 gig swap partition. And now we have to change, if I hit P, you'll see we now have 2 Linux type partitions, ID83, a 1 gig and an 8 gig. So we want to change that 8 gig one, SDA2, to a swap. So now we go T to change the type, partition number 2. And now there's a lot of types, so we have to hit L to find the list type, or the partition type. So you'll see there's a whole bunch of them on there, and you'll see that ID82 up here is Linux swap. So we will select 82. Now when we look at the partition table, we'll see that we now have Linux as our 1 gig partition and Linux swap as our 8 gig. And at this point, we could create other partitions if we want. We can make one for home. We can make one for, I like to do one for var log. But I'm just, for the sake of speed, I'm going to make this system a 2 partition system. So the next partition will be partition primary. It'll be our 3rd partition. And we're just going to go to the defaults. That'll use up all available space, giving us 65.8 gigs for the rest of our partition. Now we hit W to write this data to the disk. And now the next thing we need to do is format the partitions. So the way we do that is mkfs, make file system. I hit tab so that you can see the different types of file systems we can do. There's a lot of them, but we're going to use ext4. So you go period ext4 /dev/sda1 is our first partition. And we did it. Now we're going to run the same command on sda3. And that's going to take a little bit longer. And it's done. And now the next one is make swap /dev sda2. That'll create our swap partition and format it for swap, for the swap file system type. And that's done. And now we're going to do swap on /dev sda2. That turns on our swap partition. So now if we hit free, we'll see that we have 8 gigs of swap along that pretty much matches our 8 gigs of RAM. So the next step is to install the core system, or to mount the partitions that we just created. So now we go mount /dev/sda3. We want to mount this first because this is going to be our root partition, or our root directory. And we're going to mount that in /mount. And now we're going to mount /dev sda1 to /mount/boot. We make the boot directory after we mounted SDA. Right there /boot. Okay, so we got those two going. And now we're going to mount /dev sda1 to /mnt boot. That gives us our file systems that we're going to be working with. And the next step is to mount, or not to mount, but to run packstrap. Packstrap will install our core system. So it's packstrap-mnt base. And this is going to take a couple minutes depending on your internet connection. So I will fast forward us through this. Okay, we're back. So it installed a whole bunch of packages, and if we look in /mnt, you'll see that we have basically a full directory structure, which is good. We want that. So the next thing we want to do is create our FS tab for the new system. And there's a script that comes with Arch Linux called ginfstab, and you give it -u mnt. So it's going to look at the files that are mounted on mount, and it's going to create a FS tab as if that was the root directory. It doesn't seem to add the swap, so we'll have to add the swap directory manually. So we do redirect output to /mnt/etc/fs tab. Now, if we cat that file, you'll see that we have our file systems. Did it add swap? No, hey, it added swap. The last time I did this, it didn't add swap, so I'm actually pretty surprised about that. So we don't have to worry about the swap partition, it's added. Okay, now we're gonna run something called chroot. Basically, that tells the shell that you're in at the moment to remap the root to whatever directory you pointed at. So this will basically make it seem like we're in our new file system. So Arch has one called arch chroot /mnt. Now you'll see we're in our slash directory. This is actually the file system we're building. So if we cat /etc fstab, you'll see it's the one we just created. That's one step closer. Next, we need to set up our time zone. And that's actually fairly easy. It's a symbolic link. So your user, share, zone info, region would be, for me, US. And I think Pacific. And then we want to put it in etc local time. Now we want to create our locale. So I'm going to install Vim because I prefer it over VI. So I think I can do that. pacman-s Vim. Yes. Okay, I have Vim installed. So now I can do Vim /etc local locale.gen, and we find UTF, I think it's US. Yeah, so it's going to look like this, but we'll look for the official one. So en_us.utf-8. So it's going to find the first one, hit N for next, and here's the real one. So we'll uncomment that, write that to a file, and then we run locale gen. That'll create the locale for your system. That's actually really important because there's some programs like Gnome Terminal that if that's not configured correctly, it won't run. So the other thing that we want to do, we want to set our host name. So vi etc host name. It's going to be a new file, and we're just going to call it arch. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is we want to set up grub so that we can actually boot into the system. Grub is the bootloader. So this is actually pretty easy. So you type grub-install --target equals i386-pc/dev sda. That is our, you want to point at the device, not the partition, because it will find the boot sector and write to it from there. So we do that. Oh, that didn't work. I think I have to install it. pacman-s grub. Yes. So we're installing grub. Okay, so grub installed. And now we run the grub install command. Target. I also had a typo in there. Grub install --target equals i386-pc/dev sda. Installing for i386-pc platform. Installation finished. No errors reported. That is good news. Then we do grub-mkconfig-o. So it's making a config based on what we just set up, and now it's at the -o says output this config to /boot /grub/grub.cfg. And at this point, in theory, we should be able to reboot and have a system that works, but we won't have networking yet. We still have to set up networking, but I like to do that after we reboot after the grub install. So I'm gonna halt the system. Oops, we're still in halt the system. And then we go to machine, power off. Because I want to unmount the CD-ROM drive. Storage. Remove disk. So now the ISO isn't mounted as a CD. So this should be successful. This should boot up. We should get a grub screen. Yep. And Arch Linux. Hit enter and we should get a login prompt. Yep, there we go. We can log in as root because we haven't made any accounts yet. Don't forget to set the root password. Otherwise, you'll leave your system wide open to be owned. Okay, so now, excuse me. Now we want to configure the network. What we want to install for the network, I'm going to do a DHCP network. Okay, the first thing we want to do is enable our Ethernet interface. It should be down by default. So we can do IPA and we can get a list. And we can see that my interface, we have two. We have LO, which is local host or loop. And then we have ENP0S3. So once we have that interface name, the ENP0S3, we can do IP link set ENP0S3, oops, 0S3, and we can say up. IPA DDR or IPA works also. Now that'll give us an interface, and now the next thing we need to do is run DHCP-CD. So we do system CTL enable, and then after we enable it, we can start. This should give us an IP address. Yep, so I'm pingable. So as you can see, I got 10.0.2.15. Sorry for all the jump cuts, guys. I got a really bad cold and I keep coughing. Okay, so now we have our network enabled. We have our interface enabled, and we have DHCP assigning us an address. So we're on the network. So this, if you wanted to stop here and you just wanted to run a headless server that didn't need a GUI, you're done. At this point, you just install whatever you want to run, like Apache or MySQL, whatever services you want to run, and you've got a server. You got an Arch-based server ready to go. But we're going to take it one step closer. We're going to install the VMware or VirtualBox guest applications, and pacman dash, we're going to search for them first. VirtualBox pipe grep guest, and then we can see that what we want to install is VirtualBox-guest-modules-arch. So pacman dash s VirtualBox guest modules arch. This will make it so that when we install our X server, that it'll work. So at this point, we want to reboot so that the modules take place, and it also gives us the opportunity to verify that our network stuff does come up on boot. So we'll just do a quick reboot. Arch Linux. Start in version 231. Root. My password. IPA. We have a 10net address. I can ping Google. I may not have set up DNS yet. Oh, nope, we got DNS running. Oh, gets set up to DHCP. So we're now got a working system. And now the next step is we're going to add a user. Add user. I think it's add user or user add. User add Fratum. Pass WD Fratum. And we're gonna make my home directory /home/Fratum. Own it so that I own it /home Fratum. Another thing we're going to install is sudo pacman-s sudo. This will let it make it so that when I log in as Fratum, I can do root stuff if I need to. And I like to use the wheel group for my sysadmin groups. So we're going to do vim /etc group /wheel. That's right there. And I'm going to add Fratum to that group. And now we're going to edit the sudoers file and enable the wheel group to be able to run sudo commands. So we just uncomment this here. Now, in theory, if I log out, login as Fratum, I can sudo, and there we go, I got root. Okay, so I no longer have to log in as root. That'll be good, because when I install SSHD, which will be any minute now, I can disable root login, and that'll protect me from brute force root attacks, which is what we want to really protect ourselves from. So before we get to that, let's get our graphical interface going. So we've now got a shell-based system that we can log into. It has network access. It's configured with the very base applications, but we want a GUI. So this is actually pretty easy. So we want to install xorg and xorg init to start. And this will take a few minutes, so I'm going to fast forward through this install process. Again, this will take time based on... Oops, I didn't like xorg init, so we'll just do xorg to start. Default all. This will take time based on your internet connection, because it's going to pull in, what is it, 80 packages? So I always go with the defaults. And we'll fast forward from here. Okay, so we just installed xorg, but we now need xorg init, and I'm not sure why it didn't xorg-init. Maybe it's called xinit. There we go. Forgot the X in there. Okay, that went really easy. So we're gonna install a desktop. Need a desktop, guys, and we also need a greeter. In this install, I'm gonna do Gnome 3 just because I do sentiment on everything. So lately, I've been trying to play around with Gnome 3 to see if I like it. So this will be my Gnome 3 test. Did I say that I really love Arch, but I hate installing it? See the process? This is why people are afraid of it. It's not really that hard, and it's fairly easy. It's just time consuming and a lot of manual configs and a lot of typing. So don't fear it. I recommend, not for a new user, but if you've been running Linux for a while and you want to get down and dirty and get familiar with the command line, I highly recommend doing it this way. It's totally worth the effort in the long run. Okay, so we did xorg init. Now we're going to install, and this one takes a long time too. Gnome-desktop, gnome-shell, and gnome-extra. And I think we want gnome-terminal, because I don't think that comes by default, even with extra. Yeah, so get ready for more fast forward, and here we go. Oh wait, defaults again. Default. Okay, my blind dog's howling again. Anyways, see you in a couple minutes. Oh, it's done. Phew. Did I mention that I love Arch, but I hate installing it? I think I have. That's like at least the third time. Okay, so now we installed Gnome and Gnome Desktop and Gnome Terminal and Gnome Shell and all that Gnome stuff. But we still need a greeter. So now we're gonna use GDM. So pacman-s GDM. This should download pretty quick. And done. So no fast forward there. And then we do systemctl enable GDM. Now, in theory, this should all work. And I'm going to try it now, but I want to do it from a reboot and see what happens. So we're rebooting the system. And if we get the GUI, I'm going to go full screen. And I have a GUI! Yay! So we're going to go full screen. And look, it detected that I increased the screen size. That's because I have the VirtualBox guest stuff. So I'm going to go full screen mode. And I should be able to log in as me. And sign in. And that's normal. And here we go. We have a Gnome desktop. And go to activities, show applications. You'll see that the gnome-extra is what installed all of this stuff. And I should be able to get a Gnome terminal. Well, I thought I would. Let's just type terminal. There we go, terminal. And hopefully I didn't screw this up. Okay, Gnome terminal's not working. I thought I installed xterm. This happened to me before, and it was something to do with locale. Not locale. Locale. So I have no terminal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reboot into single user mode, and I'm going to turn off GDM, and I'm going to try to figure out what exactly happened with, and so to do oh, by the way, to go into single user mode, you edit your grub entry. This is a one-time edit. It's not a permanent edit. It's just for this boot. And at the end of the Linux line here, you just add the word single. And then you hit Control X, and it'll log you right into a root shell after you enter the root password, of course. Sudo. Oh wait, no sudo. Pacman-s. Oh wait, we gotta disable GDM because I have no networking when you load in this way. So we go systemctl disable GDM. Now we can reboot again. This will boot us up into a non-GUI boot. And we can log in as Radom. And sudo pacman-s xterm so that we have a terminal. So we have xterm installed. Sudo systemctl start GDM. That should get me right into it. Let's not forget to re-enable that. So click my name, log in. And then go to activities, terminal. We'll do xterm. There's our xterm. We'll go huge. You guys should be able to read that. There we go. And now if we type gnome terminal, they should tell me what the error is. Why won't it launch? In theory, typically you see an error at this point. So I'm not sure what happened here. So here, let's become root. Make sure our system is up to date. Okay, we're up to date. clear GNOME terminal. I do not know why GNOME terminal won't launch. The fact that it's just sitting there without outputting anything to the console is confusing. The last time I had GNOME terminal fail on me, it complained about the locale, and all I had to do was reset the locale and it worked. Error constructs a proxy for org.gnome.terminal. Interesting. I've never seen that error before. I'm not going to address it today in this video. GNOME terminals fart at this point. But basically here we are, guys. We've got a fully working, almost fully working GNOME install. We should be able to run any of these applications without any problems, such as calendar. And there's games, a bunch of stuff. But there you have it. I don't know if there's a browser installed by default. Firefox isn't. Chromium isn't. So let's go with Xterm, and we will make the font huge. Sudo pacman-s Chromium, because we need a browser. Yes. Okay, so we installed Chromium, so that means we now have a browser. Chromium. And just to prove that it works, here's my website. Yay! We're set. At this point, it's just a matter of installing whatever packages you need to get things done. If you need a video editor, you can install OpenShot or Kdenlive. If you need an audio editor, you can do Audacity. Whatever you want. This is a fully working system minus GNOME terminal, which I don't know why it's not working. Who uses that anyways? There's a bunch of other ones. I actually will install the KDE libraries and use Console. I love Console. I use it even on Cinnamon. I use it on whenever I use GNOME Desktop. It's your choice. And I'm sure that I just missed a step on the install. So I might have skipped something that's got GNOME terminal pissed off, and I probably just need to rerun through it. But it's probably not even a big issue. Anyways, folks, that's it. I've actually had several requests to do an Arch install, and I've always wanted to do it. And because I don't do Arch a lot and it's so much command line stuff, I was a little nervous about doing it, but it turned out okay. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please thumbs up, like, and share, because my channel's growing. By the way, we're at 200 plus users now, and it's been less than a year. So I'm pretty proud of that, and I want to thank you guys for that, and I really appreciate your loyalty and watching my videos. I do this stuff for you guys, and my channel is Sue channel. Let me know what you guys want to see, and I will work on getting that up there. Some requests may sound simple, but I may not be able to do it. But if I can't do it, I'll let you guys know in the comments, and if I can do it, then I'll just do it, and then we'll get a video up. So thank you again, guys, and I hope you like this video, and I hope you have a wonderful night, and take care.